This is Telling Our Stories Part 1, the role and process of the playwright. In this section, we'll go over the role and process of the playwright, theatrical script formatting, and how the Aristotelian elements can be used by the playwright.
Hi, I'm Paul McLean. I'm a fine arts specialist with the Georgia Department of Education. My background happens to be in theater and film, and this is Telling Our Stories, or strategies for introducing students to playwriting and writing a 10-minute play. So playwriting is a key element required in many theater classes, which makes sense considering that telling stories is the primary function of theater. Unfortunately, playwriting is not always a central part of theater training, depending on the area of focus when pursuing an education in the art form. So this webinar looks at strategies and resources for introducing playwriting to students with the goal of developing an original script. The resources and outline are intended to provide useful resources for teachers that have a wide variety of experience, from limited background in playwriting to those with extensive training. The resources and activities can be used in classes from 6th grade theater arts to high school dramatic writing. We will take a look at the role and process of the playwright, appropriate formatting for a theatrical script, distinguishing characteristics of dramatic dialogue, dramatic characters, dramatic plot, and dramatic structure. We're also going to take a look at Aristotle's elements and how you can break down those categories into different approaches to playwriting as a whole. The role of the playwright. The playwright is the person who crafts the play. That's why it's spelled Playwright. This is because it is wrought like a craft more than it is written. The playwright is the crafts person. The process of crafting the play, though, is called, ironically, playwriting. Playwriting. In brief, playwrights do the playwriting. So this is what the playwright does. So the playwright is the only theatrical artist that does not need to first read the script. Every other artist associated with scripted theater has the job of interpreting text rather than starting from scratch. As with non-theatrical literature, it is crucial to engage in the same types of research processes to mine personal experience, imagination, and facts to avoid cliché in order to develop a nuanced and engaging original script. In order to do this, the playwright must select a subject that is personally interesting and engaging. Just as the director cannot effectively direct a script that they don't find interesting, an actor cannot engage creatively with a role where there is no connection, the playwright, likewise, will not be able to fully commit to the process of writing a play if they don't find it interesting. So a good rule of thumb for beginning playwrights is to write the play you want to see. Now we're going to talk about determining a focus and emphasis. Specificity is crucial to avoiding generic cliché choices in all aspects of theater. In many ways, closing doors to what you are not focusing on allows for more freedom to explore the areas you have defined in more depth. Similar to the process of zeroing in on a research topic for a research paper, the playwright must select a specific focus or emphasis for the subject matter. You must establish a purpose. This aspect speaks to what the playwright wants to achieve through the performance of the play. How does the playwright want the audience to experience this play? Part of establishing a purpose is selecting a genre, a category of artistic or literary composition. It's characterized by a particular style. Some common theatrical genres will be discussed later in this webinar. Establishing the point of view. Once the purpose is established, you need to know whose story this is. Theatrical literature and screenplays tend to have a narrow set of perspective through which the story is told. Even when plays feature multiple characters with important arcs, traditionally there is a dominant story with threads of lesser storylines mixed in. This is a reflection of the dramatic plot structure, which we will explore later in the webinar. The choices around the point of view may depend heavily on the playwright's established purpose. Certain perspectives may fit the intended genre or goals better than others. Write before you write. Once these 4 decisions have been made, the playwright can start the process of pre-writing and research. There is an axiom that writing is rewriting, but many authors find that writing is actually pre-writing. Pre-writing is the free writing period that comes before it blends into the organizational stage. This is jotting down thoughts associated with all 3 areas of research, meaning your personal life, your imaginative life, and your factual research. This also includes anything else you might want to explore before taking it into actual dialogue and structuring scenes. The length of time and focus on each of these steps depends on the challenges of the project. On the screen is a brief outline of the stages involved in developing a theatrical script. Number 1, pre-write. This includes researching your own memory, your own imagination, what would happen if I were in this situation, or if others were in this situation, and the research of fact, your actual literal observations of the world around you, or factual research from a library or other sources. Plot mapping. Laying out the events in a manner that makes sense with the dramatic plot structure. The final plan may look very different from this early stage, but organizing your thoughts and having an idea as to where you were going is incredibly helpful in the later stages of the process. Number 2, write drafts. Number 3, read. Number 4, revise. Number 5, write again. Number 6, share and get feedback. Number 7, revise. Number 8, share and get feedback. Number 9, revise. Number 10, share and get feedback. Number 11, revise. So this can go on ad infinitum. And really, the only reason you would stop is because you've come to an area where you feel that this is ready to move on beyond this simple feedback loop. The next step is staged readings. This is a formal, rehearsed reading with a live audience, followed by a full critical response process. After the staged reading, typically rewrites occur again, and then you can ease your way into informal performances. This is a difficult stage for most playwrights to get to. It is often expensive and time-consuming, as it involves getting someone to semi-produce the play with full blocking, and then it is followed by a critical response process. Many playwrights participate in submitting to competitions that offer this stage as a reward. After that, often there are rewrites, and then pitching and producing your script. Theatrical script formatting. The playwriting format for theater is not as crucial to having people read the script as it is with a screenplay. There is no singular, absolute correct way to format a theatrical script. Some playwrights use the script formatting to make statements about characters and movements within the play. Many playwriting competitions have unique formatting submission rules that change over time. That being said, there are some generally accepted norms that exist for the formatting of an unpublished script. New scripts do not typically look like the formatting found in published examples. General expectations include the following. Act and scene headings are centered on the page. Characters' names are centered and capitalized. Stage directions are indented, one tab, and italicized. Characters' names in stage directions are capitalized, and parenthetical stage directions are used for small actions. Margins. Generally speaking, the margins are expected to have a top margin of 1 inch, a left margin of 1.5 inches, and a right margin of 1 inch with a bottom margin of 1 inch. You can set your device to these margins to write within, or there are a host of playwriting software available online and to purchase that will actually set it up for you, and then you don't have to think about this particular arrangement of the margins. This is an example of a title page where you can see we have all of the information that is expected on the front, no more information than what is listed here. Beyond that, it begins to get considered a little unprofessional. This is an example of the characters, the dramatis personae example. And then this is an example of the main body with all of those margins we discussed. The Aristotelian elements as they relate to playwriting. Even with the focus on the dramatic plot, dramatic character, dramatic dialogue, the playwright's work can fall into the trap of reading like a novel if the perspective of the audience is lost. For this reason, it is often helpful to look at the descriptive criticism of Aristotle's Poetics. The Poetics is the earliest surviving work of dramatic theory in Western literature and provides a descriptive criticism of tragedy, which focuses on the audience's experience of the work. This external appreciation of the play experience is invaluable to the playwright for remembering to include all of the necessary aspects to be effective with an audience. The Aristotelian elements: plot, events that occur over time related to the conflict. Character, the agents of the plot. Theme, the subject, purpose, focus, and perspective. This contextual definition may be different from how theme is often discussed in ELA. Lexicon, the word choice found in dramatic dialogue. Music, everything that is heard on stage. This includes not only actual music, but planned sound effects. Also the sounds of the actors' voices and dialects. Spectacle, everything that is seen or heard on the stage. Sets, costumes, lights, sounds. The categories serve as excellent tools not only for observing and documenting the experience of an existing play, but also in the planning and mapping out of a play in the process being written. It's a good idea to use each of these categories as a jumping off point for each of the three categories of writerly research, meaning your research of your personal memory, your imaginative research, and research of fact. Dramatic plot structure, or plot. The term drama comes from the Greek dran, which is to do or act. In this way, drama is related to action. Dramatic structure then refers to specifically active structure, where events happen in a particular sequence. All theatrical scripts have conflict. Typically, the progression of how characters deal with the conflict follows a basic story structure with a clear beginning, middle, and end. When engaging in the plot mapping stage of this writing process, it's a good idea to remember this beginning, middle, and end structure for laying out when you want specific actions to take place. The Freytag pyramid can be a useful tool when looking at the organization of events in the play and can help with the plot mapping. The Freytag pyramid is a modification of Aristotle's structure when he transformed the triangle into the pyramid. It includes an exposition, a rising action, a climax, falling action, and denouement or resolution. You can see an example on the screen here. Placing scenes or titles or even events along this structure could be a useful tool in building the play outline. It's also important to note that while a classical structure may have a shape that looks like this in a true triangle, often that falling action in modern plays is not so evenly balanced with the rising action. Another way to look at discussing the dramatic structure is to break down the beginning, middle, and end. So characteristics of the beginning might include what some folks call a point of normalcy. This is the state of the world as it is. Often, when telling stories, it's a broken state of the world, an imperfect or an unsustainable state of the world. Then there is an interruption. This is the inciting incident. This is an interruption to the normalcy, the point at which something occurs, forcing characters into action to deal with the conflict. Then there are characteristics of the middle. The conflict is the main character's want. The rising action is a series of events created by the main character's decision based on the character's want. You can think in terms of, but then blank happens. Therefore, blank happens. Now, the climax is the point of no return, when the character has done something that they cannot get back from. One of the ways I like to describe it is it's like a chemical change. Up to the point of the climax, it's just a physical change. We can go from water that is liquid to solid to back to liquid to steam if we had to. But once we have that chemical change, like a burning log, there is no coming back from that point. And then characteristics of the end. We have falling action as a result of the climax, and these build on one another. And the term falling action does not necessarily mean the play is slowly calming down. It is truly falling. Some of the most intense scenes take place in that falling action because it's like a boulder gathering speed as it goes towards the resolution. Resolution is the state of the new world after all of the action has been done, and then the final moment is often related to the point of normalcy, often a comparison of how things stand now after the actions of the characters in comparison to how things were before the characters began to act. Dramatic character and theatrical genres. Just as dramatic plot structure refers to a plot structure full of events or action, dramatic characters are likewise active characters that convey information to the audience. The dramatic characters are sources of information for the audience through their appearance, dialogue, monologues, or soliloquies, and action. Characters are abstractions of humanity that create the illusion of life. In addition to the traditional protagonist and antagonist, several types of dramatic characters are found in different genres of theater. This is a list of common dramatic characters. Extraordinary characters. These characters are larger than life. They're typified by gods and kings that exist beyond the realm of day-to-day life for common man. These examples might include Shakespeare's King Lear or Euripides' Dionysus. These characters exist in classical tragedy. Representative or quintessential characters. These characters are more like common man. They have concerns and lives which the audience can relate to or empathize with. These might include Arthur Miller's Willy Loman, Ibsen's Nora. These characters are often associated with realism or contemporary tragedy. Stock characters. These are stereotypical fictional characters that are often two-dimensional and repeated often as tropes in multiple stories, such as Arlecchino from Commedia or the Harlequin, or any sitcom character. You find these in comedy all over the place. The dominant trait character. These characters are governed by a specific singular personality, such as greed or nervousness or confusion, but they don't fall into the common stock type. Ebenezer Scrooge is a good example. Moliere's The Miser. Then we have minor characters. These characters exist to further the larger plot. The classic example in Shakespeare is Rosencrantz and Guildenstern and Hamlet, featured as main characters in Tom Stoppard's Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead. A narrator character can also be used. These characters often break the fourth wall and directly interact with the audience to tell or comment on the plot. The stage manager in Wilder's Our Town is a good example. You can also have non-human characters. These characters often have specific personalities and communication capabilities of humans, but they're characters that are written as non-humans. You can think of this as like the animals in The Lion King. A combination of character types and structures of the plot often determine the genre of the play. A genre is a category of artistic or literary composition characterized by a particular style. Common theatrical genres include, but are not limited to, classical tragedy, modern tragedy, comedy, tragicomedy, and docudramas. Now the lexicon. The lexicon is all of the words in the play. We're going to look at lexicon through the lens of dramatic dialogue. Dramatic dialogue refers to the active use of the text by the characters. This is often similar to dialogue found in traditional literature. The main difference is the weight it carries in terms of conveying the plot. A theatrical text relies heavily on the dialogue to convey as much of the plot as possible. For this reason, it's beneficial to put as much of the action into the spoken words as possible. While stage directions are an effective tool to convey mood and action to a director, the best way to guarantee specific action on stage for the audience is to put it in the dialogue. Dramatic dialogue is active dialogue. In classical plays, often the only actions indicated by the stage directions were entrances and exits. Even those were echoed by characters, lines referencing the entrance of characters or the need to leave. Dialogue should be driven by the character's needs. The following are some stage conventions associated with the words that characters say. Dialogue. This specifically means multiple characters speaking to one another, all attempting to achieve their own goals. Monologue. A longer speech on stage, often in the presence of other characters. A soliloquy, a private monologue or a monologue directly addressing the audience where a character speaks inner thoughts aloud. Direct address, this is speaking directly to the audience, breaking the fourth wall. Choral speech, this would be characters speaking the same lines in unison or singing the lines together. These are found in Greek theater and other poetic styles.
This is Telling Our Stories Part 1, the role and process of the playwright. For additional questions, please contact the Fine Arts team. Jessica Booth, Paul McLean, Casey Hall.